Hey guys, it's Katie here with Life in the Mundane, and I'm really excited to come talk to you guys all about why you should go to a homeschool convention this year, why I think it's a good, worthwhile investment for any family, and what you can do in advance to prepare to make your homeschool convention experience easier. So let's get started. So before I jump into a few of these tips and tricks, as well as the reasons why I think it's a worthwhile investment to register for a homeschool convention this year or in the future, I do want to give a little disclosure that I enjoy doing these things to prepare. These things will help anyone to have a easier experience at a homeschool convention or conference. That being said, if you are not a planner, if you are registering or maybe even signing up the day of and are not able to get to these things, you can still have an enjoyable experience at convention. And so I don't want you to feel bound by the suggestions I'm about to give, and just take what works for you and run with it and forget the rest. So that being said, the three reasons that I really think every homeschool family should actually invest in a ticket to a homeschool conference or convention is very simple. One is it's an opportunity to learn and grow. As teachers in public schools, private schools, they all have continuing education courses, teacher work days, in-service days, things like that. And I view the convention as my teacher work day and in-service day. I feel like it's important to continue to learn ways that I can serve my children better. But also I feel like there's an encouragement aspect that's really, really important. As homeschool moms, it is the most rewarding job, but also one of the most draining jobs. And it's very hard to fill up the cups of our children when our cup is very empty. Low on vision and energy and excitement about what we're doing. And so this is an opportunity to set aside to learn different ways you could maybe do better or expand the way you are currently doing things, but it is also a time to encourage you as a mom, as a dad, to continue on in this calling that God has given you. So I think that is important in and of itself. The second reason that I think that you should attend conference is to connect. And it is such a rewarding job to be a homeschool mom, but it can feel lonely when you are home alone with your kids all day. If you don't have a local community of homeschoolers surrounding you, or a co-op or something like that, it can feel incredibly lonely and discouraging. It can also be hard to get answers to your questions. You know, how do I deal with a child? How do I help a child read who has dyslexia? What do I do if this math curriculum's not working? You know, what else should I look at? And there are online communities, and those are great, but nothing beats a person-to-person contact. So I really recommend people going to convention with the goal of making connections, whether that's making connections with vendors, with authors of curriculum, but also with other moms and experienced moms. At our personal homeschool convention, they even have a separate booth that's set aside with just experienced moms who have been there and done this beforehand, and you can stop by any point and ask your questions. So reason number 3 might seem obvious, but is the benefit of getting to shop. Now, whether you actually have the budget to physically shop at that point, or whether you're just window shopping, I think shopping is actually a really, really important thing that you can get done at convention. This is one of the few times that you will be able to have all of these curriculums at your fingertips, that you can physically open the book, look through it, get an idea of what's involved versus just having maybe a sample lesson or two. You can see how it's designed, how it's laid out. You can talk about the price. You can kind of shop around several different places to see what the best deal is. And it just gives you an idea, even if you have a child with you, to see what they think of the curriculum before you make the investment. Again, even if you're window shopping, this is so helpful because you can put it on your list for later, or you can, store that in the back of your mind of, maybe this isn't for us. You have to purchase something from there. But get to know the different kinds of things available, because I cannot tell you how many times we've gotten mid-year and found out what I was planning doesn't work and had to switch curriculums, or maybe for a specific child, it's worked for 3 kids before that, but for the 4th kid, it's just not working. And we've had to switch things up. And my experience going through the convention and actually seeing what different products and curriculums are available has helped steer me during those mid-year decisions and giving me some kind of context so I'm not just scrambling for online resources at the last second trying to figure out what might work or what might not. So I think that that is definitely a big pro, and a lot of times there are discounts at a convention, and when you purchase at a convention, you're also helping those vendors come back in the future years, which gives you more opportunity to look through things. So even if you can't purchase all of your curriculum at a convention, I do try to shoot to purchase something if possible. All right, so now when it comes to preparing for convention, what can you do? How can you prepare and make the experience more enjoyable and less stressful on you? The first thing is to register in advance. I think this is something that gets lost a lot of times. You definitely can, typically at least in our homeschool convention, can register at the door, but registering in advance gives you a discount oftentimes. Then at the door, it gives you the ease of mind of knowing it's done, and it allows them to prepare for you. So registering in advance is always helpful. The second thing is actually thinking about what you're gonna do for meals. And so in advance, I like to prep and think about what I'm gonna do. We can't afford as a family of 8 to be eating out for, several meals. So we choose one meal each day to eat out. I usually will pack a lunch. There's lots of ways to do it, but the idea is to think ahead of time. And it's such a positive time, but it's a lot of information coming at you. It's a lot of things to process. And so just be prepared to be tired. That's pretty typical. It's a little bit of information overload, and that's okay. But just know that even if you get done at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're gonna wanna have something easy already planned in advance for that last night's dinner at home or on the go. So a few tips with that on how you can make the meal planning process go easier, but also a little bit cheaper if you do need to eat out, is to just take a little time in advance and search the area. Just Google Maps, pull up the convention center, and look around the area. Oftentimes the restaurants that are the closest to the convention centers are oftentimes not the cheapest. So do a little bit of research ahead of time and think about what your options might be, especially if you are willing to get in your car and drive a little bit instead of walking, or maybe willing to walk a little bit further. You can also, by looking at the area ahead of time, you can look and see if there's coupons you can bring along. I do recommend getting apps, planning ahead of where you might eat out, and getting the apps for that restaurant. They offer apps now, and when you sign up for their apps, they offer deals that you can get free items or discounted items only through the app. Also, this allows you to order in advance and just walk in and pick up versus having to wait in a long line, because if you are at a convention, there's a good chance there are a lot of other people there, and they're probably all on the same lunch break. So that's something that saves time. For us personally, we have found that there's a Papa John's just across the street from our convention hall, and if we walked in and we ordered at that moment and waited for them to make everything, it would be way too long and it would actually eat up all of our lunch breaks. So I started downloading the app several years ago. I downloaded the app, and I now actually order a pizza in the morning and order it to be ready to pick up at a certain point, and then we just walk across the street and pick it up, grab a few paper plates from them, and have lunch for all of my kids very inexpensively and very easily for everybody, because also through the app I was able to use different deal coupons to get the best deal. All right, so we've got you registered, we've thought through the meals a little bit, and now we're going on to how to prepare for the actual convention. So I said there were 3 goals for our convention, that we were there to learn, to connect, and to shop. And I'm just gonna kind of walk through each one of those briefly and tell you a few things you can do to prepare for that area. So the first thing is to learn. How can you prepare to learn in advance? Well, the first thing is to look and see what kinds of things you can figure out before you actually get there. So for our conference, you can actually go on the website. You can print out a Word document that not only has all of the workshops and the times that they're at, but also a detailed description of what each workshop is. Sit down, print this out, sit down with your spouse, and pick out which workshops look appealing to you. And don't be afraid to pick more than one. I know ideally you need to eventually narrow it down to one, but maybe circle or highlight the ones that really, really interest you. And then talk through with your husband, pray about it, look over it and decide, narrow it down to one. For our convention, you're able to purchase a CD for the ones that you missed. And so I oftentimes, if I have two I'm really torn between, I will just purchase the CD for the second one. But having multiple options out there of what interests you really does help, because if you go to the convention and let's say you chose to go with one speaker on one topic, and you know the topic was okay, but maybe the speaker wasn't the best presenter, and you just picked another topic during the next hour by that same presenter, you might want to switch and go to another one. Well, I've already got my list of which ones I'm interested in, so I can go straight to there, pick another one, and I don't have to spend a lot of time thinking, because there's usually not a lot of lag time between these workshops. Also, getting ready for learning, you're gonna want to pack some supplies. I'm gonna drop this entire packing list down below, but just a few supplies that you're gonna need is paper. I usually like to grab a notebook, a special notebook reserved for this kind of thing, pens, pencils, whatever, highlighter, some sticky tabs and or stickers, which I'm actually going to explain why you need this in my video on Saturday, so be sure to subscribe, because while I'm doing a video today on how to prepare for convention, I'm going to do a video on Saturday on just some tips and hacks that I've learned over 10 years of attending conference, on things you can do while you're actually there and after the conference to make the experience more enjoyable. So be sure to subscribe. So having tools like that for good note taking is really important. A tablet or a computer that you want to bring along to take notes, that's another great option as well. Also along the lines of preparing for learning is to think about dressing in layers, or at very bare minimum, bring a jacket or a sweater along. So the second area is connect. So how can you prepare to connect? It may not seem like there is a lot you can do in this area, and this is one of the lesser areas for preparing. But one thing I will tell you is to think of questions that you have about homeschooling, whether it's a specific curriculum or about homeschooling in general. Write them down. Take that same notebook that you're going to take notes in at the convention and write down all the questions you have. And that way you have the ability to ask a vendor or another mom as you go throughout the weekend, so we can learn from one another on how to navigate this journey. So you can make a list of questions. The other thing is just mentally prepare yourself for connections. So if you are an introvert and the idea of making connections just terrifies you, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Even if you go into the convention, you shop, you learn, and you don't really talk to anybody else, I still think it's important to connect, because you see that you are part of something bigger. You see that you are not the only one walking this walk. You see the bigger vision for everything, and you see that you're not alone. And I think that that is important. You can connect in that way if you just absolutely do not want to talk to anybody. But if you are open to making connections, one thing you can do to prepare is being open to opportunities that might come up. So when you're sitting in a workshop waiting for it to start, a lot of times people will get there early and they're just sitting, waiting to save their seat. Don't just sit there and play on your phone. Look over at the person next to you. Introduce yourself. Guess what? You are all homeschooling or thinking about homeschooling in this room. So just ask them, how long have you been homeschooling? How old are your kids? Just start a conversation. And that's when the best connections are made. So just be looking for opportunities like that. Don't be afraid to swap information with people at the convention or even vendors at the convention, so you can talk in the future. The third area, and probably the area where there's the most preparation, is for shopping. We all love to shop, but I think it's important to look over the vendors that are going to be there. Be familiar with that. So for our convention, there is a list on the website. Look over the list. Start the ones that you really want to go see. Maybe check out a few websites, but at least, even if you just glance, just be familiar with who to expect to be there. And if there are certain ones you're looking forward to, make sure they're on the list. Also, it's a good idea to make a list of what you need. Again, even if you are window shopping, making a list of things you are looking for is really, really helpful. So I always have a list of curriculum I need to buy for next year, and sometimes I buy it at convention and sometimes I wait till later, but I think it's important to have that list with you, have it ready to go, and then and also having a list ready to go so that you know if you find a great deal, you might want to snag it there. Also with that, if you have a specific subject maybe, or a specific grade that you haven't decided what you're doing yet, so maybe you're walking into convention and you're just not sure what you're going to do for science, know that ahead of time. Have that as a list. So then as you go to different booths, you can ask, hey, what do you have for science? Maybe jot down some notes on what they have for science so that you can decide later. Last thing you can do as far as preparing in advance is probably the most important thing. Like if you do nothing else in this video, do this. but is to prepare a budget for the convention. Okay, guys, this doesn't have to be your curriculum budget for the year, but at least set some kind of parameters, because there's going to be so many neat things, products, not just curriculum, but different learning tools, games, services, all sorts of things. And it is so easy to overspend and not realize it, or to feel guilty about the things that you did purchase. And by having a budget set aside ahead of time that you've talked through, that you know exactly what you can afford, you can go in guilt-free, purchase the things that you want and need, and walk out of there happy and not regretting it after the day after. So think through that budget ahead of time. As far as what you can pack for this, I would recommend packing good shoes, because usually the vendor halls are quite large and it's a lot of walking. Packing either a backpack, or better yet, a roll-on suitcase, roll-on bag, anything like that, where you don't actually have to carry it to hold your purchases. This is also a good idea if you're purchasing things for your kids that you don't want them to see yet. You can kind of hide it away. A lot of times we'll snag birthday gifts, educational birthday gifts, for the upcoming year, and we can throw it in those bags so they can't see it as we're sneaking it out to the car. The last thing to pack to help you with your shopping experience is tape. And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, Scotch tape. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but if you watch my video on Saturday, you will understand that hack and why it's so important. I will drop all of that packing list stuff in the description below, so you can check that out. I hope this has been helpful to you, just getting you started on a few tips for being prepared for your convention experience. I would love to hear what other tips you have, whether it's preparing beforehand or while you're actually there. And so drop those in the comments. Give this video a like if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel. I post videos every Wednesday and Saturday on making the most of little moments in homeschooling, home management, parenting, and everything in between. I hope you guys have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.